financial plans, a great New Year's resolution. I'm Stephen Herwire, owner of Herwire Financial Plans with Direction. But first, yesterday's market wrap. Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at 47,951.85. Year to date, it is up 12.71%. S&P 500 closed at 6773.91. Year to date, up 15.1%. NASDAQ 100 closed at 25,016.70. Year to date, up 19.06%. Gold closed at $4,350.80 per ounce. Year to date, up almost 65.5%. U.S. dollar index closed at 98.45. Year to date, down 9.25%. 10-year Treasury closed at 4.134%. It is down year to date 0.374%. And finally, the S&P aggregate bond index closed at 225, year to date up 7.07%. So, from a survey from a couple years ago, New Year's resolutions, about 48% of them were improved fitness, 38% improved finances, 36% improved mental health, 34% lose weight, and 32% improved diets. A few quotes that I find handy around this discussion. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. The best way to avoid or to make money is to avoid losing it. Thank you, Bernard Baruch. Financial plans are to help you avoid the myriad of minds in your financial life. There's a cost to a financial plan, but there are also costs to inactions too. So I'm going to give you some real examples of situations I was involved in where a plan either did happen or it would have happened had they had a plan. So beneficiary reviews. I do beneficiary reviews for all my financial planning clients because it's important because there's a lot of things that have beneficiary designations, life insurance, retirement accounts, annuities. And this will surprise some people to know, but just because they put something in their will does not necessarily mean that everything's going to go where they say. If they have a designation on one of these above type of accounts or policies, it's going to go where it's designated to go. So, real life example, I promised you that. I had a client who was divorced and their ex remarried and started a new family. The ex updated their will, but did not update all of their beneficiary designations. So they had not changed the beneficiaries on their 401k. The client who brought this situation to me was the beneficiary. The client asked me, how do I get the money back to my ex's family? I indicated, even though I was an attorney, it was my understanding that in a case like this, the client was free to take the money from the old 401k. The client didn't feel right about that, so I referred them to an attorney that I knew could help with that sort of thing. I've also read in the paper back in the 80s, a man and a woman were close, and he put her on as his beneficiary on his 401k. They split up a couple of years later, and within the last 10 years, I think, he died, and he'd never changed his beneficiary, so his ex-girlfriend from the 80s got about $750,000. So part of the financial plan is doing periodic beneficiary reviews to ensure as life circumstances change, that your wishes for things that pass outside the will, like these things, go where you want them to. In cases like this, even if the will states something different, the beneficiary designation is in charge. Qualified charitable distributions. Now, if you're not quite age 70 and a half, you don't have to, you can ignore this. I mean, if it's coming up, you might pay attention. For those who, if you're not charitably minded, then this won't mean much to you. And if you don't have any tax deferred accounts like traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks. So I had a 73-year-old client who had not yet taken their required minimum distribution for the year. It was their custom to take the required minimum distribution because they didn't really need it, put it in their checking account, and then write a check to the church. Well, they weren't itemizing, so they were getting no tax benefit from this. So I said to them, I said, how do you like to save about $2,500 in taxes? And they said, how do I do that? I said, well, instead of having the IRA send money to you to put in your checking account and then you write the check to the church, why don't we just skip that step where it goes into your account and we have the IRA write the check directly to the church and you can present it to the church. He was happy. We consulted with their tax preparer who agreed this was a good idea. Since they were in the 22% tax bracket for the federal taxes and 6%, they saved about $2,024 in federal income taxes and about $550 in state income taxes for a total savings of a little over $2,500. Finally, interesting thing about Medicare surcharges. Now, if you go into a higher tax bracket, I say $100, well, that $100 you're going to pay some extra taxes. If you breach the threshold of a Medicare surcharge bracket by as much as $1, the surcharges can be imposed. There is a surcharge for Medicare Part B and Medicare Part D, and this surcharge will last at least 1, maybe 2 years. So I had a soon-to-be retiring client who was working 1 full year, and then they were working a month or so into the next year. And this person was the trustee on a trust, and they were going to get paid for it. So they could choose to take the payment in December, or they could choose to take it in January. Well, we figured out if they took it in December, that it was going to push them into a higher Medicare tax bracket for surcharges. So I advised and we consulted with their tax preparer to consider pushing the one-time payment off into January of the year they were going to work, only part of the year. The tax preparer concurred, and it was estimated potential savings was about, from not having to pay the Medicare surcharges, $1,500 a year for a year or two. Okay, so we've gone over 3 potentials. There's a lot more uh, things that a financial plan will spot that most people won't even think to look for. One of these I wouldn't have thought to look for before a few years ago. So, unlike other resolutions you make, where it's going to require ongoing work and discipline on your part, the work part of a financial plan for the client is at the front end. After that, your planner does most of the work with periodic reviews with you. Only a few examples of costly mistakes were discussed, but there's a plethora of other potential train wrecks that could be in your path. Similar to a pilot doing a pre-flight checklist, I use checklists to help me spot opportunities and potential problems. I go back to my Navy days when I was a reactor operator on the USS Sturgeon. We had a 65-page checklist to verify proper operation of reactor safety systems. Okay, this is the last time I'm going to give this warning because soon it will be a moot point. If you are on a Medicare supplement, which means you have a separate prescription drug card, you can disregard this warning. However, if you're on a Medicare Advantage plan, pay attention. In October, hopefully you will receive either an annual note of change letter or an ANOC letter or a termination letter. If you receive the ANOC and are content with your current plan, no action is required on your part. If you're not content, unfortunately, December 7th has passed, so your next window to make a change begins on January 1 and it goes through March 31st. Regardless, you're stuck with whatever plan you signed up for or were in for at least the month of January, but you can make a one-time change. If you received a termination letter, you have until December 31st to select a new plan. If you do not, you will find yourself on January 1 with only Medicare Part A and B. And for January, at least, you'll be stuck that way. You will have a few more months, January and maybe February, to jump into the thing. But whatever the case, whatever day you sign up, you will not have a new plan until the first of the next month. And if it's March, it's too late. So if you received neither letter, or if you received the letter and maybe you didn't recognize for what it was, and you're on a Medicare Advantage plan, I suggest calling the plan and inquiring if they're continuing into the next year. Once you graduate, be it from welding school, engineering school, or law school, you're going to need a different plan for each of these stages depending on your individual situation. During your working years, am I saving enough and is it in the right place? Glide path to retirement, which I arbitrarily label as the last 10 years prior to retirement. Well, USS retirement be ship shape on the appointed day. Retirement, how do I avoid running out of money before I run out of life? And legacy, does what I worked hard for get to where I want it to after I'm done with retirement? I can be reached at herwirefinancial.com. I do in-person, Zoom, and phone appointments. I am licensed and registered across several states and can easily add states if there's a need. If you'd like to schedule an appointment, you can click on the schedule an appointment button in the upper right-hand corner of my website. Want to see more videos like this? Go to my website and click on the YouTube channel. Okay, if you want to reach me by phone, 518-631-2569. Do not text that number. We'll both be sad because I won't get it. As I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, your next Facebook Live will be January 9th. Merry Christmas, Happy Boxing Day, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year. Opinions voiced in this material for general information only, not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance reference is historical, no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. All data is believed to be from reliable sources. However, no representation is made as to its completeness or accuracy. None of this is to be construed as tax or legal advice. Consult your advisor prior to taking any action. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. There's no strategy that protects you from loss. All right, have a great Christmas and New Year's, everybody.